and all and the mobility of people. So all the infrastructures and utilities, water, power, mobility, communications, and food security, and environmental protection as well. So so when I look at the at those challenges, I found an opportunity in Clark, because BCDA is probably the biggest land owner, uh, which is a state-owned enterprise landowner of alienable and disposable land. Of course, it's still the country that is the biggest landowner, but that comprises a lot of public domains, particularly being held by DNR. But for alienable and disposable lands, BCDA has about 41,000 hectares of land across the country, and 35% of 35,000 hectares of that actually is in Clark. So when I look at the our maps, I've seen the bigger part of Clark really undeveloped and beginning to experience invasion and sprawl. So I felt the need to really, and I found a great opportunity to put a new city there. And looking at the accessibility and the location, that's also a perfect location because it's away from the coastline, but probably 30 minutes to the coastline. So to Subic, and then also to on the West Philippine side, and then moving towards the Pacific, that's also another 30 minutes once the tollways are completed. That's why we built the Subic Clark Tarlac Expressway that would connect Subic Port to Clark Airport and up to La Paz Tarlac, and then the Central Luzon Expressway moving towards Cabanatuan, and eventually it will end in either Dingalan or Baler, which is the Pacific Coast Line. Then heading further north, it would connect also these ports and these tollways to San Fernando Seaport and Airport, and up to Ilocos region. So then these are all, of course, connected to Metro Manila. So you see that we've seen in the past decade the urban sprawl of Manila going toward the south. So you see Santa Rosa, you see New Valley, but I've seen the problem being replicated in the south, because these are all again enclaves. Um, I believe that developers must stop building enclaves and rather design communities that are easily accessible and could share the roads. Unfortunately, in the Philippines, property developers would always look towards exclusivity, which also created, which partitions the cities and towns into enclaves and limits the mobility of people outside those enclaves. So, and that creates a lot of congestion because you are basically funneling all movements of peoples and vehicles into very, very select roads and avenues. Whereas if you open up the enclaves, you could actually create road sharing and a lot of multiple alternate routes and dissipate the traffic volume. So so I've seen that happening in the south, and it's actually happening now in the south. Before going to Tagaytay was quite easier and very fast, but now the congestion has really gone so
Mm,
terrible. Of course, we're building Calax, but again,
yeah.
when you build new roads, new cars would again come in, and then eventually, over time, a short period of time, the congestion would happen again. Similar
Right.
to what we experienced with the Skyway, where when we built elevated skyways, eventually, initially there has been a reduction in traffic volume, but eventually the cars had caught up, and then now we're experiencing skyways also being congested.
So,
So
and then can I, if I may, thank you for sharing about those information. I just want to touch on, you mentioned about building enclaves, and I think this is a perfect leading towards the discussion on key developments in Metro Clark. So how do you see key infrastructures that can be developed so that we can avoid these developments in Clark being enclaves? Yeah.
Yes. Well, actually, when we master plan, when I envisioned Clark, so understanding those problems and myself having lived in the slums, so I've seen the disparity of life between the slums and the rich enclave. Now I'm living in an enclave. So from the slums to an enclave, but initially before the slums, I actually migrated from the province and I lived in the farm. So from being a farmer, landless farmer, to the city migrant living in the slums, and then eventually, by God's grace, I improved my economic lot and now live in an enclave. But I've seen the inequality in the city. I've seen the disparity and the quality of life between the rich and the poor, and the lack of opportunities when when the city is built like that. So for Clark, I've seen that the best way to do that is really to reverse the priority in mobility. Now, what you see in Metro Manila, the priority in mobility is car, which is the worst kind of priority because it moves very few people. So in Clark, we have adopted as a principle that the first priority for mobility would be pedestrianization. So people would be walking. What would this mean? This would mean building and designing better sidewalks, wider, safer, and more convenient sidewalks, and more accessible too, even for physically disabled, no, for those with physical disabilities. So that would be include ramps and access for those people. And of course, then after, then then the road design should also include shades and natural shades of the trees. So because trees actually reduce the temperature by less than 2 to 3 degrees. It creates its own microclimates, and therefore it would encourage people from walking instead of taking the car or using other modes of transport. And it's even healthier. All of us now would try to meet our 10,000 steps daily requirement, right? You have the Fitbit, you have this iPhone that measures your steps daily. But if you have a city that actually encourages walking, then that's 10,000 steps a day would immediately be achievable. And it's a convenient and safe walk. Then the next would be so bicycles. So which should be a safer access also. I don't know your view on this, but as an urban planner and who's seen this in real time, most of the bike lanes now that we see are actually sharing the carriageway with cars. I believe that's very unsafe. Uh, there should be a segregation because the collision between the bike and a car would always be fatal to the bike. But if you put the bike nearer to the pedestrian with soft barriers like hedges, right, or even just road markings, that would also make it safer for the biker and the pedestrian as well. I see that always in Europe. I see that in Japan, because when you put the bike sharing the road with cars, that would always be very fatal to the biker. So bike, and then the third one would be the mass transport, of course,
Yeah.
the bus and the trains, the subways. So it could be BRT systems, which is easier to actually implement than a rail, and even more cheaper, particularly for built areas. But for Clark, it's like a tabula rasa, so it's like painting the entire canvas, blank canvas. So there's a lot of opportunity to put that design from the get-go. And of course, the least would be cars. And of course, when it comes to mobility, you have to put intermodal stations that would serve also as TODs, the transport-oriented developments, that would also bring services and products and goods to people, and immediately change their mode of transport whenever they need to, right? In Manila, you see the difficulty here. When you get off the MRT station, you have to walk so far to get to the jeepney station or to the bus station. The
Right.
system, the modes of transport are not integrated. They are not. actually connected with each other. But even the same mode of transport, the MRTs and the LRTs, the stations are not connected. You have to get down and then go up again instead of having a common station, right? But that's driven mostly by
Yes.
private agenda investment,
Mhm. Mhm.
which
Eh,
is somehow prejudicial to the common interest. So
Colonel,
yeah,
I think these are very interesting developments, and this also gives us an opportunity to discuss next your actual experiences in terms of implementing these projects. But before I go into that, I'd like to open the floor to our audience or our visitors here who would like to also ask some questions. Mertz, do we have some questions, or would you like to have some questions? While Sir Arnel is taking a break, do you have some questions there, Mertz?
So far, there's no question, but basically, uh, uh, what I've heard from Sir Arnel is everything happens in Metro Manila is something that problematic, particularly on the transport design of Metro Manila. So I think that's one realization that hopefully this would not happen in Clark. But my questions really is right now, if I go to Clark, the area of development is really in the center. So if you're say coming from Angeles or somewhere in San Fernando, uh, you really need cars to reach the area. So I think the hierarchy there is uh, what which we should go first, because in the center maybe you can walk or you can bike, but if you're coming outside, uh, the development of trains and public transport is very limited.
yes,
Okay, thank you, Mertz.
yes, Merch, that's true. I agree with that because infrastructure development takes time. So for now, you will see that car to get to Clark, you have to get to the car. But the North-South Commuter Rail is already being built. So eventually, a train system connecting Manila to Clark and to Clark City would be there in a few years' time. It's already being implemented. That's part of our greater vision years ago. So even in BCDA. So we have for accessibility, we already have the tollways that connects the seaport to the airport. And then we are now building the north-south commuter railway, which would also connect to the subway in Metro Manila, right? So you have that mass transport system already. Then you have for international travelers and even domestic travelers coming from the other. So you have the airport developed already. So that's a then you have the seaport in Subic. So the infrastructures are already being built. It's only the train that's missing. So we have the roads, we have the airport, we have the seaport. Then we must have the train, which is ongoing. Yeah, eventually, it will be a different a different development. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mertz. Thank you, Sir, for. I think it's timely that we jump into, since we're talking about implementation, and I know I agree with you. It really takes a lot of time, and so I'd like to jump into your. I think this would be also an interesting discussion about your actual lessons, no, in terms of handling and implementing projects. So, what were your experiences specifically? I know you have to coordinate with the cities and municipalities in terms of implementing these highways, this rail system, and the intermodal. So I think on the ground, no, it would be interesting to hear your experiences and lessons, Sir Arnel. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, thank you for that question. I think that's the elephant in the room, really. There's so many great ideas, but the execution and the delivery would always be the problem. You will never run out of great ideas. But when the rubber hits the road, when you ask them to, okay, can you come and join us to implement it? they'll probably say, "Oh, it's difficult. The politicians are corrupt. There's no money. There's no." And in fact, I've seen that. I've experienced a lot of those things. A lot of challenge. It's very very difficult, I would say, and I would confess and admit that it's not a walk in the park. In fact, when I was toying with the idea, almost everyone was against it. Almost everyone. They feel that, oh, why are you going to build a new city where you can't even make Metro Manila better? Then why build a new one? And then I would say exactly that's exactly the point, right? Uh, and you have floods, you have earthquake, you have pollution right in Metro Manila, and that's exactly the reason why we need to build a new city, which is master plan from the get go. Um, but I guess I would like to the only believer actually in my when I first had this idea was President Aquino. When I explained to President Aquino the need to build a new city because of what happened with Ondoy, what happened with Yolanda, with the traffic that we are experiencing, and the need to move people and climate change happening, we really need to move people away from the coastline and from danger areas. So it was easy to convince President Aquino, and he supported me. So it took a bit of iteration to do the master plan, and it's something that also now again a challenge of procurement, right? So and funding. So how would you now come up with a master plan? Bidding projects would take some time, and it did. In fact, the city was quite delayed in my timeline, in my own personal timeline, and because we got a consultant, we bidded it, right? So we allocated a substantial amount of money for the master plan of the city. But so when they won, I explained to them the importance of the project to them, and I was quite proud that it was a Filipino firm that's going to do it. But unfortunately, it took more than a year that they could not deliver. It appears that there's a lack of coordination among their consultants, and they could not come up with a quality output. I was terribly disappointed when I was reviewing the master plan and found out that their reference in their footnote was the Wikipedia for market research. I was flabbergasted. So and I tried to. So it's a difficulty dealing with your own suppliers and contractors. I had to terminate. Now, how do I get now the master plan that I need? So and that's how I came with the idea of design competitions, because the problem with government is always the transparency, the corruption, and the controversies that are associated with procurement. So in this sense, I felt that I can solve that by coming up with a competition, because when you do competition, no one can complain that they have never been invited, because basically a competition is an invitation to anyone, even students, not only firms, but only students, and also even international firms and local firms. So I would get the best. And then the evaluation would be done by independent evaluators. So it's not only the BCDA who are going to evaluate, it's going to be someone from the academe. So we got professors from MIT, we got professors from the University of the Philippines and other and then also practitioners, and of course even the Commission on Audit. So in having a competition, and I think my move has created a traction in government now, which led to more competitions. Now you see the competition in the Supreme Court design, the Senate, and then other competitions that even with the Banco Central now that's happening. I believe there is money in government, but it's really the challenge of procurement that's always a problem. So I was able to get the designer to get that and to deliver the concept, right? The concept plan. And through that, I was able to present that to the NEDA, to the president and the entire cabinet. and I was able to have them approve it in May of 2015. But even prior to that, I was already laying the foundation of building the roads. So where would I secure the road, the access, to so that private developers would have the faith and confidence in the project. So I talked to Secretary Singson, and he allotted 2 billion budget for the access roads leading into the city. So that also created a confidence in the project, which eventually led to the successful bidding of the first phase of the project, which is the 288 hectares Philinvest area. So again, another one would be a legal challenge, particularly for developers such as the land tenural rights, right? So most developers would say we want freehold land. But I believe, having been in this industry for more than 30 years, I believe that government should not be selling land. I am quite convinced now that government should not be selling lands. What the government can do, and we did that in Clark, is to create a 100-year usufructory, which allows foreign developers to develop land. So one of the major hurdle of economic provision is the ownership of land, prohibited under the Constitution. But the Constitution does not prohibit usufruct by foreigners, by foreign companies. So that also opened up the opportunities both for local developers and foreign companies, particularly when Clark is a special economic zone and they could build business districts and manufacturing centers inside the city itself that would serve as the seed population for the city. Then, so of course, there are problems with possible corruption. So integrity is critical in the faith and the confidence of players in the business. So in from the get-go, I made sure that there'll be no corruption in the process, and the process will always be transparent. So in that sense, we got the confidence of the business sector, who they now invested into the city. Yeah.
So Arnel, so from the metropolitan context, I'm glad you shared a lot about the challenges and implementing and jumpstarting Clark Region City. Given the scale of it, no, if you look at Central Luzon, the whole region, I would say it's about roughly 15-20% the huge development in Clark. So do you think the neighboring municipalities and cities such as Capas, Tarlac, and Mabalacat, these cover also New Clark City, right? So was it also a challenge in terms of dealing with these neighboring cities in terms of metropolitan perspective, where you really have to conduct all of these developments harmoniously?
Yes, thank you for that question. I think that's very good. That's actually a challenge because mayors tend to create their own fiefdoms, right? Particularly here in Metro Manila, you see each mayor is a kingdom, is its own city. But planning, traffic, sewer, water, and all the utilities wouldn't are actually political boundary neutral. They don't care whether who's the mayor of Makati and Mandaluyong, but it's the same road that you have to traverse. So understanding that and respecting the mayors also because they have their own constituency, I secured their support by sending their city planners and town planners to Singapore. So what I did is I looked for a partner, and I found that in through the Temasek Foundation. So Temasek Foundation provided a grant for tuition free and board and lodging free for a month study in, yeah, a few week study in NTU, Nanyang Technological University. So I sent the mayors and their city planners to train in green and smart city governance, so that each mayors would look at their cities complement with a Clark City, so that when you build a metropolis, the city mayors and their planners understand the need to really connect and synchronize with everyone. So So the plan is really a metropolitan plan. We start with Clark Green City, but I have brought the mayors and their city planners together, even the NEDA people. So I sent more than 100 of them, free tuition, free board and lodging. BCDA only as a counterpart, we funded the tickets, the plane tickets. But because Cebu Pacific plane tickets are cheaper, so it's a quite so we got the buy-in of the local government.
So I think based on what you shared, no, it's key that the partners, you're all in the same page, and I think that's what you initiated, and that's very critical, and also give them an opportunity to learn about what the development is, and then the buy-in will come in, right?
Yes, yes. So I also made time with the mayors, talking to them and presenting to them the bigger picture, because the mayors would only look at their own city. But if they see the bigger picture and where they are located and what the role and the opportunities for their city, they immediately buy into the idea because it's for their benefit. So the mayors and the planners had become my allies. That's why we got that support, full support, with the entire region. Yeah.
So given I think this covers, Metro Clark covers two regions also, right? Pampanga and Tarlac. Were you able to also convince the governors?
Oh yes.
Because this will affect also their regions.
Yes. I had a very close working relationship with the governors, vice governors, their provincial board. I go to there and make a presentation to their boards. I always attend the regional development council meetings, by being called by NEDA, and even the town mayors and their council, and even the stakeholders. So I always have an open forum with them, even to the farmers. I go to the farmers myself personally, talk to them individually if they are affected, so they get so that they would understand the bigger picture. Once you're on the same page and they understand the benefit that the development will bring to them, then it's important. But it's really important to also listen to the stakeholders and their challenges, right? So because some are landless farmers that you're going to dislocate, what are you going to do? For us in BCDA, we decided to give them land, or make the land, nominal fee, because at the end of the day, these are farmers, poor farmers that need livelihood, and they are part of our city. We cannot discount poor people and the ordinary people from the city. We're not building here a business district. We're building a city, for everyone. Yeah.
Wow, thank you for that, sir. And I think those are really insightful on how you underwent all of these challenges. So before I go to the next session, which is the future, maybe we can open this up again, Mertz, to are there questions from you or from the audience or our participants?
Yeah, just one question from Clemens, one of our fellow. Actually, it's not a question. It's more of in support of how we can serve the market center from the outside. So maybe Clemens can clarify this. You want to clarify it further, Clemens?
Yes, I saw in your introduction the traditional urban is with the center, and if you have the people run around singular to everywhere to collect the things, it's better to serve with big coordinated trucks the center, that the people can go by feet into the center or by last current. Instead, the little, also the spreading, also you have center, strength the center, instead of spreading the little vehicles. Is this
I think what Clemens is asking is in terms of the phasing of the development of the project. So maybe Sir Arnel, you can share to us why, for example, the Philinvest location was the phase one, and also considering that I think there's only one major road before, right? The Botolan access road. So
Yeah.
was that a reason? Yeah.
Well, to build a city, you have to understand that you're building a city for human beings, and with balance with the environment and sustainability. But innovation is a very important part of it. So my first, the way I approach it is to first attract the institutions. Basically, a lot of planners and a lot of developers neglect the institutional value of a the value of the institutions in a development, like schools, hospitals, churches, and places of worship, sports, and parks, and open spaces. Before even bidding this out to the private sector, I made sure that open spaces and institutions are already secured. So what did I do? Because we're a state-owned enterprise, we could immediately provide and give land to the University of the Philippines and other state-owned universities. So first, the University of the Philippines, which has a campus already in Clark. So we donated 70 hectares of land to the University of the Philippines. The second would be the Technological University of the Philippines. For those who cannot go into the University of the Philippines, they could enroll in Technological University of the Philippines. Why? Because Technological University of the Philippines could supply human resource and talent to our manufacturing investors in Clark Special Economic Zone. So, and then you have a lot of research. I also provided land to the Philippine Science High School and even donated 20 million pesos to their innovation facility. So, so from grade school to high school to the university and even up to the research component, I even linked the University of the Philippines with the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, so that they could come up with the curriculum, and they could probably, the MIT could set up a satellite campus or program in the University of the Philippines. So because a lot of US universities are actually putting those campuses in Asia, and where the best place would be really in Clark, because it's very near the airport, and also connectivity. If it's going to be a smart city, I need to put broadband, the bandwidth to be very fast. So what did I do? I talked to the ICTO, which is now the DICT, and we negotiated for the submarine cable of Facebook. I was the one who negotiated and brought in and invested $20 million for BCDA to build the Luzon bypass line. In exchange, Facebook would give the Philippine government 2 terabytes of bandwidth, free for the Philippine government, because that would serve as our bandwidth for the smart city designs, and also free access of government to internet, because where government has been spending like 5 billion every year. I think it's even much more expensive now. So 5 billion every year the government is spending, but now we could provide this all for free, and then you could have free Wi-Fi in all the parks, in all the schools, in all the institutions that are needing all this bandwidth. So that the 2 terabyte bandwidth is double the size of the bandwidth that PLDT and Smart, the Globe and Smart are all providing. So that's enough bandwidth. And of course, to create innovation. So we envision Clark to be the hub for artists, musicians, designers, scientists, scholars. This would be a city for very, very curious minds. We decided not to put casinos there. or any gambling in the city. Our thrust really is to build the city of very smart, inquisitive, curious, and adventurous people. So if you're a musician, you have a space there. If you're a coder, a programmer, you have a space there. If you're an inventor, you have a space there. If you're an artist, you have a space there. So all this confluence of all these innovative and creative individuals and institutions create a platform for you. Then you would have venture capitalists coming in to fund and to invest in startups. So you have that kind of bandwidth, you have the technology, you have the space, you have the platform, and you have the institution to support. So that's really the long-term vision. That's why we have UP. Then, of course, the parks, right? The park should be open to everyone. You should never spend any money just to get to enjoy the city. Even if you're a poor person, you could dream of being rich there, because you could have the same space as the billionaire would have in your park. That's why from the get-go, we made sure that rivers and streams would never be touched, or rather, uh, further enhanced to be more sustainable. So the softscapes, these are not going to be hard concrete development, but rather your family could have a picnic beside the river. So the river easements could be 100 meters away from the river bank. Currently, the law only provides 20 meter for agricultural lands. I believe that's very small. Uh, for urban district, it's all even 3 meters. And in Metro Manila, that's even encroached upon. So from the get-go, the water bodies and the environment would be a major component of the city. So
Okay.
yeah, so out of the 9,500 hectares, only one third will be built up. All the others would be green spaces. Yeah.
Thank you, Sir Arnel. I think you touched on your aspirations and the ways forward for sustainably developing Metro Clark, and then that's really great to hear those, especially home for curious minds. No, I think that's really very, very interesting. So let me go to the final part of this event, this Metro X. So let's talk about the future. The specific conditions right now, both social, the environmental, you have the climate change, and more importantly, another elephant in the room, the change in administration or the elections this next year. So the continuity. So how do you see New Clark City and Metro Clark developing the next 10, 20 years?
Well, I think regardless of the administration, regardless of the crisis, the fact that we have an increasing population, it's a no-brainer that a city will always be developed. Look, we're 110 million people, right? And our birth rate, only the birth rate, is about 1.4 percent every year. So that means you have 1 million people, more than 1 million babies, uh, 1 million babies every year that adds into our population. 1 million is a one city. That's the entire city, right? So that means we must continue building our cities much better, and we must improve our existing cities to accommodate this population. Um, so it's the demographic inertia, right? The momentum that needed to be addressed. So regardless of the administration, they will always have to invest in infrastructure and in city building. Uh, now, what I did, I think in my time, I actually left 19 billion cash. When I joined BCDA in 2011, the cash position of BCDA is only 7 billion. When I left, because of the good governance initiatives that we did, we were able to raise that cash position into 19 from 7 billion to 19 billion in 5 years time, and it could even be higher actually. So when my term ended, I had a very smooth turnover to Vince Dison. I briefed him. I told him I had put in 19 billion cash for you to spend and to invest in the development of Clark and all other infrastructure development of BCDA. So that's only in cash. But in terms of asset base, we have expanded that more than triple. by more than triple, so that your capability to borrow, if there's a need to borrow, would be higher as well. Remember, we have an investment grade rating, and the asset base of BCBA, we have expanded by more than thrice in my time. And I have all turned it over to Vince Dison for him to continue. And that's so I hope that Vince would also do the same to his successor. Building the city requires a number of succession of leaderships. I laid the foundation. I I provided the resources for him to do that, and then when his time, then it's his time now to do that to his successor. It's not for us. The work is bigger than any one of us, but it cannot be done without any of us. So we have that mindset of stewardship when it comes to city building. We
Sir,
don't.
if I may, those are I fully agree with you. The succession is really important so that there's continuity. If I may ask a specific question, no, a particular aspect, since you mentioned the demographic inertia, and this relates to housing, affordable housing. So we know the lessons in BGC and so forth. What advice can you give to the current administration, to the future administrations, in terms of making sure there is affordable housing within New Clark City? Are you looking into potential innovations, or there are, of course, there are challenges on the ground, so would be interested to hear your thoughts on this.
Thank you for that question. In fact, I have already. That's one of the first things that I did with Clark. Unfortunately, I'm sad that the Vince, the new administration did not pursue that. But I laid the foundation for that. Even entered into an agreement with Pag-ibig. So the first project that we did, even before the Philinvest development, we came up with a design competition for in affordable housing. So this would be for workers' housing. So basically, we look at the affordability of most minimum wage earners in Clark and the surrounding region, and then design a housing which is a mixed income housing. So this is also one thing. When we designed that, we mixed both the rich and the poor, because the facade of the building would be totally similar. It's only in the size and the fit outs that may differ. But you will be the rich and the poor would be actually living together. So and affordable for even the minimum wage earner. Then we invested 2 billion to build that. So I allocated 2 billion pesos loan with Pag-ibig. We could have done that because we had the cash, but we decided to partner with Pag-ibig because eventually the the people would have to borrow from Pag-ibig, right? So it has to be financed by Pag-ibig because there are anyway members of Pag-ibig. So we loaned 2 billion to build the facility, and then eventually sell that or even rent that on a long-term rent to the workers and to the population. So there are about 65,000 workers in Clark. A lot of them are actually not Kapampangans. They're coming from different places, and they are renting around the Clark Special Economic Zone. We could immediately populate the new city with about 8,000 to 10,000 people. That's an entire barangay already. So, 2 billion could be a good seed fund for that. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Sir. I think that's a very interesting and important aspect of developing a city. So maybe as a final question to close this, what advice can you give to future city builders, metropolitan managers? I see a lot of architects here and fellows from different countries, and also some students, architectural students. Yeah.
Well, first is when you create an idea, you have to have that mindset that would it serve the greater good, right? Would it serve humanity better? Then the second is, would it be also be sustainable, environmentally friendly? Would it also create a better world, right? So those 2 points are my major guideposts. Uh, you're actually creating a city not out of physical space, but really for humanity. It has to serve humanity. It must create that a vibrant quality of life for them, and then of course it must be sustainable because human beings need the environment to thrive. We need the air, we need the food, we need the water, and therefore it's interconnected. You cannot build a city separating the people from the environment, and that's what happened in Metro Manila. Look, our designs require our designs actually allowed making Pasig River and our creeks and esteros to be septic tanks, right? So instead of building fronting the river, our most of our houses and apartments and buildings are actually hiding the river from the bigger community, and then draining their sewer into those in those sewage though into those river bodies of water. That has to change. It has to be reversed. You must we must be connected to the water. We must be connected to the environment, to the trees that we plant. So in the all the roads must be tree lined, and the trees must be native species. And then I've also required that in the design, the cities must be in bloom at any given time of the year. What would this mean? This would mean that when you do your selection of flora, right, of plants that you're going native plants that you're going to plant, it has to have that seasonal blooming, right? So one tree could bloom for May, then the other one, once that is done, then the other tree would bloom for June. So you have an entire city that's beautifully blooming the entire city and promoting green. So, and of course, fruit bearing trees for poor children, or we see street children, right, in Metro Manila. They don't have food to eat. But if you're coming from the province and the farm, you could actually pick wild guavas, wild mangoes, and then you could already eat. That city should be that kind of mindset should also be in Clark. So you could have any street child or anyone, regardless of your economic, you could pick a fruit in the city.
Thank
So
you, Sir Nel.
those are
Yeah,
things.
so I really love those ideas. And Mertz, before we give our closing, do we have questions, or do you have any words? Mertz?
So far we don't have questions in the audience. Maybe the students are shy to ask question
Don't be
to
shy.
Sir
Please ask
Arnel.
questions. I love
Yeah,
questions.
yeah, just a parting word maybe on my part, because exactly why we do this kind of webinar series, because the future is really lies in the hands of our new architects, new professionals. So maybe we could start waking something like a wake up call to everyone, especially to the young ones, to really take this kind of metropolitan development seriously, because uh, the context of having livable cities and a metropolitan is something that we really admire for the Philippines. So yeah, and New Clark city development is something that we can uh, look into and make this as a model to other cities here in the Philippines. So I think that's my takeaway on this discussion.
Thank you, Mertz. Yes, really, Sir Arnel, really grateful for your time. So if you have any final words to share with us, yeah, I agree with Mertz. There are a lot of students here, future architects. Yeah, any words of inspiration or encouragement to them?
Well, uh, I love my job. Uh, I actually don't look at it as only a job. I look at it as a calling. Well, as I always tell my friends, my favorite game when I was in high school was SimCity, right? So, and there's no more rewarding job than playing SimCity in real time, right? So it takes years to play, but so architects, engineers, planners, you have a very, very big role to play in how humanity could be shaped. Remember, human lives are shaped also by the physical space that they occupy. So, the kind of human dignity, the kind of self-respect, that and the kind of dignity as a nation itself, and the opportunities that are available to us are also defined by the physical space. So, because, for example, your choice of job would be dependent on your mobility, right? Your choice of house or residence would be dependent on the accessibility and availability of the utilities. So so your own mindset and your own the way you live your life and lifestyle would be defined by how the city is designed. So designed for human beings and for the environment. Always look at that way. And then you'll never go wrong. Now, for those who are interested in really creating an impact, be a city planner, join the local government, but of course, choose a good mayor like Vico, right? So, or elect a new mayor, a good mayor. But then what I did is I actually just sent the mayors to school. So in Singapore, so and their planners. But I really long for a country whose city planners are really visionaries. I've served in HUDCC when Vice President Robredo was still the chairman of HUDCC. And I joined some of the meetings in HLURB. When cities and towns are presenting their CLUPs, I was really so disappointed because some of these, or a lot of these CLUPs, are cut and paste. There's no vision, there's no innovation, and there's no really thinking of the future on how the community could be shaped. So I hope our planners, our architects, our designers won't be like that. Uh, Always test the boundaries. Always go and take the innovation one notch higher every time, and then bring that to your work. Bring that to whatever you do, whatever kind of lifestyle you do. So yeah, so you can
Thank you
shape the
so
world. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sir Arnel. Really, really inspiring and grateful for your time, and I'm really honored that you graced us with this hour of sharing. So yeah, so in behalf of the International Metropolitan Fellowship Organization, so we extend our gratitude to your time, and hopefully we can have another session with more discussions and interesting insight. So I'd like to close this event. I know you're very, very busy and everyone also. So I'd like to thank you again, Sir Arnel, and everyone for this discussion, and hope you're all safe. And good afternoon, everyone. See you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Feel free to get in touch with me. Send me a message anytime if you need some inputs. Yeah.
Okay, so by the way, before we leave, can we have a photo with Sir Arnel? Can you open your um, videos and so that we can have a snapshot, no, with Sir Arnel Casanova. Really, I'm glad, sir, that you're safe. Are you still staying in Manila, or you're in your farm?
Yeah. Well, I'm in Manila now. I'm at home, working from home. But yes, no, I'm a weekend farmer. So
Yeah, I can see that.
I have a cattle ranch, and I plant corn and palay and calamansi and vegetables, everything.
Amazing. So for those who need, so those in the Batangas area, so I'm promoting Sir Arnel's farm. Feel free
Yes,
to
yes.
contact him also.
You're, you're
That's
free to.
also in improving the agricultural richness of our country. So thank you for that, Sir Arnel. So Mertz, are you taking the photo?
Actually, Mark, I failed to mention the food security and the farmers, the agriculture
Yes.
also part of the
Mm.
Clark City plan. So I actually tried to bring the Rungis market there,
Mm,
from
yeah.
Paris, so that our farmers would have direct access to the global market. Yeah,
Yeah, hopefully that also continues, no?
yeah.
Usually the challenges. But yeah, again, thank you, Sir Ernest. So I don't want to take too much of your time. Good afternoon, sir, and keep safe, everyone. Salamat po. Maraming
Thank you,
salamat.
thank
Thank
you.
you. Keep safe.